In lesson 2-2, we are representing rational numbers on a number line. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to represent rational numbers using a number line. So here in this picture, we have four animals. We have a seagull that is 3/4 yards and it's in the sky. We have a dolphin that is -1/4 yard in the water, a shark that's -5/10 in the water, and a sea turtle that's -1 yard in the water. So when we're looking at this question down here, it says, what can we say about the animals and their positions relative to sea level? Well, where is sea level? Sea level is where the sea meets the sky. So right here is sea level. And everything above sea level, the rational numbers above here, which is only one, would represent the locations above sea level. And if you notice, this is a positive number. There's no negative sign in front of it. And all of these locations below sea level in the water are all negative. So they represent the locations below sea level. So that's what I'm going to write here. The positive, I'm going to use a plus sign for positive. The positive rational numbers represent above sea level. And the negative, I'll use a negative sign to represent that. The negative rational numbers represent below sea level. So if we think about this in terms of a number line, these are negative. These ones up here, which is only one, is positive. So what would sea level represent as a number? Well, that would be the 0. Sea level is 0. So in part B, it says, how can we use a number line to represent the locations of the animals? So what we are doing and what we're going to be doing in this lesson is looking at rational numbers and figuring out where do they belong on a number line. So the first thing that I want to do before I even think about where these animals go is figure out how am I going to set up my number line. So on my number line here, I can see I have a +1, a 0, and a -1. And my animals here, if I look at the fractions that I see fourths, I see a whole, and I see a decimal point. This decimal point, this -5/10, I can actually change into a fraction. So I'm going to split up my number line into fourths, so 4 equal parts. So this would be half-y, that's fourths. Half-y. So now if we count them, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts on my number line. So I want to change this decimal into a fraction so that I can plot all of these animals on this number line. So I can see -0 and 5/10 as the fraction -1/2 because I know 5/10 is a half and this is negative, so it's -1/2. So now that I have this as a fraction, I can go ahead and start plotting the animals on this number line. So let's start with the animals above sea level. Remember, sea level is 0, and I'm looking at 3/4. 3/4. Okay, so on my number line, here is 0, and I want to count up because it's above sea level, above the 0, 3 out of the 4. So 1, 2, 3. This represents 3/4, and that is the seagull. Okay, the next animal I have is the dolphin. It's negative 1/4, so it's below sea level. It's below the zero. So I want to go 1 out of 4 below sea level. So I'm going to count 1. That is negative 1/4. And sometimes students forget to put the negative sign, so please make sure you do that. Negative 1/4, and that is the dolphin. Okay. The next animal I have is the shark. The shark, remember I changed negative 5/10 to the fraction negative 1/2, and that's halfway between the 0 and the 1. It's also the same thing as negative 2/4. 1, 2. That's negative 1/2, or I'll put that over here, or negative 2/4. And that is the shark. And the last animal that I have is a sea turtle. This one is a whole, but it's negative. It's below the 0, so negative 1. Negative 1, and that is the sea turtle. So this is what we're going to be doing in this lesson. Looking at the rational numbers, looking to see can we change any of the rational numbers either from fractions to decimals or from decimals to fractions so that we can plot them on a number line. So let's look at example 1 real quick. All right. Understanding rational numbers. Any number that can be written as a quotient of 2 integers is called a rational number. A rational number can be written in the form a over b or negative a over b, where a and b are integers and b cannot equal 0. So that means the denominator cannot be 0. A rational number can be a whole number, fraction, or decimal. So what this essentially means right here is a rational number is any number that can be made into a fraction or a decimal. So if we look here, here's a fraction, negative 8/9. That is a fraction, so it is a rational number. The whole number, I'm just going to give you an example, the whole number 1 can be made into a fraction. They're using fourths here. That can be made into 4 over 4. That is a whole. The decimal point, which we talked about before, 5/10, can be made into a fraction as 2/4 or 1/2. So because I can make these fractions, they are rational numbers. So when we look here, negative 8/9 and 3/5 are rational numbers in the form a over b or negative a over b. It's just a fraction. 1 is a rational number because it can be written as 1 over 1 or 4 over 4 or 2 over 2. It doesn't matter, but it can be made a fraction. So there are 2 different ways that we can plot these. We can plot them on a horizontal number line, so a number line going from left to right, like the one that you see in my classroom, or we can plot them going from up and down, vertical, like the one that we did before with the animals. So you can write negative 4/3 as a mixed number. So if I divide them, divide the units on the number line into thirds and find 1 and 1/3 to the left of 0. If I divide 4 divided by 3, I get negative 1 and 1/3. And that I can put on the number line here. So here's the 0. Always look where your 0 is. That's your starting point. Here's 0. And I'm going 1, 2, 3. That's a whole, so negative 1 whole, and 1 more third. So Here's negative 4/3 or negative 1 1/3. It can be written either way. And here's another way, using the vertical number line. So we're going to plot negative 1.5. We can write negative 1.5 as a mixed number. And I like to tell my students, say the decimal number out loud. How do we say this out loud? We say negative 1 5/10. So we're going to write it exactly how we hear it. Negative 1 5/10, which we can also write, if we reduce the 5/10, we can write as negative 1.5. So here is our number line. Our 0 now is up here. That's our starting point. And we have negative 1 and negative 2. So we are going to plot at negative 1 1/2 or negative 1 5/10. So we're going to go to negative 1, and then we're going to go halfway between the negative 1 and the negative 2, which is right here. So we could write this number as negative 1 5/10. We could write it as negative 1 5/10, or we could write it as negative 1 1/2. All three ways are the correct way to write this. So now I'm going to have you guys try on your own, and I want you to try the do you know how.